The Art of Yes. Interview with Gary Schwartz. Hello, Gary.
Hello, Monica.
My guest today is Gary Schwartz, who is an actor, improviser, director, voice actor, and director, and I think what did I miss? And writer, right?
Yes, and writer.
And writer. So many things you do in your life. Welcome to the Art of Yes, and nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. The pleasure.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you? You just got your vaccination.
Oh, yes, and I'm pretty excited that I made...
You feel relieved? Is there a sense of relief that
Oh, yes, I feel relieved, and I feel relieved that I could make it today with you because the interview, because I was really in a hurry and was last minute and my time changed to later. So, but I made it, and I'm very grateful for having this possibility to talk to you.
Well, I'm flattered that you asked. You've been interviewing all of the improv heavyweights from around the world, and so now I'm in the list.
Yes, and I'm excited about it. Gary, I'm, as you said, heavyweights. That's a great term, which I didn't know. And is that because you are doing improv for such a long time, and also it's very important because you were very close to Viola Spolin, who is called the mother of improvisation, or the modern improvisation.
Yes.
And that makes this talk for me even more special because you were really close, and I hope we will go through her work as well. But usually I start with the beginning and how people got into improv. And I know a little bit of your story, that you went to improv through miming, and your experience was much earlier with acting and miming.
Yes.
And then you got to improv. So would you be so
Right.
kind and just telling me how this young boy started miming? What was involving in this?
How did I start to mime?
Yeah, and why?
Well, when I was a kid, I was at home, and I was basically a lot of times just by myself, and I guess I was just kind of withdrawn kid, and my family had this big picture window mirror. Big mirror, a huge mirror on the wall. And I don't know what age I was, maybe 9 or 10 years old. I just liked looking at myself in the mirror. And I always had this idea that I said, I asked myself, how do people see me? This is I never really spoke about this before. When I was really curious, because I came from a really screwed up background, but I didn't have a good self-image of myself. So I wanted to project a really good self-image to make people think, that I'm a nice guy and all of this stuff. So I would do things like turn my back and say, and just like smile at somebody, and I would say, hey, I feel like I'm smiling. And then I would check myself in the mirror to see if the smile looks like how I wanted it to look. And if it didn't, I would practice until I got the smile to be that nice smile. Or if I was unhappy and I didn't like somebody, I said, what is that expression? And I would turn my back, and then I would turn into the mirror and I go, yeah, that works. So I started just making faces in the mirror. And then I started just practicing. I said, can I hold my head still and then just move my body around? And I also watched a lot of television as a child. I was in the very first generation where television was brand new in the 1950s. And so I got to watch all of my favorite comedians and clowns, like Dick Van Dyke and Jackie Gleason and Red Skelton. And I would imitate them and practice their pantomime routines that I saw on TV. So that's how I started. And then when I was 13, well, just before I turned 13, I was going to Hebrew school after my regular school, and we were in an Orthodox Hebrew school. My parents wanted me to be raised Orthodox Jewish, although they themselves were not, but they wanted their son to be. And I hated it. I was awful. So I would go to Hebrew school every day, and it was across the street from this very big, imposing Catholic school named St. Helens. And they all wore uniforms, you know, and they all had the little plaid skirts, and the boys wear little white shirts with ties. And I'm just going, what goes on in that school? Because it was nothing like what we were doing. And I was really curious. And I said, okay. But you know, my Hebrew school teachers were saying, you know, don't go near the Catholic kids, you know, they don't believe what we believe. So we were like, kind of like, which was all the more reason why I wanted to go see what goes on in a Catholic school. So we were waiting for our rides after Hebrew school one day, and a man comes out from across the street, and he's got a beard and a turtleneck and a blazer. And he walks across the street to where we're playing with a ball, right? To this, all of us Jewish kids. And he goes, hey, does anybody want to be in a play over at the Catholic school? And what had happened was, I guess they were rehearsing a show. The show was Our Town, and half the kids in the cast got the flu and got sick, and they needed to fill out the cast. So he came across to see if any of us wanted to, and all of the kids just ran and said no. And I raised my hand and I said, yeah. So he walked me over to the Catholic school, and I walked inside, and there was, you know, an auditorium and a stage and everything. And I got cast in the show. And I got to play Simon Stimson, the choir director, who was a drunkard. And so, you know, I did all of my Red Skelton drunky things. And he was hired from the community college as an outside director. He wasn't part of the Catholic school. And he said, well, you move very well. And it was kind of fun, you know, and I got one of my very first compliments. You move very well. I said, thanks. And he says, well, you know, in the summer, I run a mime school and a mime troupe in Poughkeepsie, New York, which is about 60 miles south of where I was living. He said, if you're interested, you could come and become part of our company. So I had a terrible kind of home life, and anything to stay out of the house and spend time away was fabulous. So I went and I spent the summer with this group called the Now Teen Mime Troupe, and in Poughkeepsie. And he choreographed all of our routines, but I got to make all of the other kids laugh by imitating what I saw on TV. And then we got a job, and it was we were the mime troupe that followed Pete Seeger, the folk singer, famous folk singer from the 1960s, and he had a boat on the Hudson River called the Clearwater Sloop, and he would bring the boat. This was in the 1960s, and he would bring the boat up the river and stop at all of these places along the river. The river was very polluted. and he would bring all of these famous folk singers and recording artists to do these big concerts where tens of thousands of people would sit on the banks of the river, listen to this concert, and then he would ask everybody spread out and clean up, 5 miles of the river. And so that's what he did. He was cleaning up the river by doing these folk festivals. And so while the folk festival, while all of the people were massing on the hillside with their blankets and whatever, they needed some entertainment while the concert was getting set up. So we were the entertainment. Mm-hmm. So I got to perform when I'm 12 and a half and 13 years old, in front of thousands and thousands of people.
Did you already earn money with that?
Did I earn any money? That's a good question. I don't really remember. I don't really remember if we earned any money or not. We might have, but it was just so much fun to perform. And we performed all up and down the Hudson River Valley. And I got to write a couple of solo pieces, and I got to perform them in front of, and I got instant applause and laughter, and I was hooked. That was my start as a mime when I was 13 years old. So I was self-taught, and then when I went off to college, I studied a little bit of dance. And when I went to college in Boston, there was a residency there from the National Mime Theater of Boston. And so I joined that company, and I got my classical training where, all of the classical mime training, mm-hmm. walking against the wind and doing all of the things and isolating your body in specific ways. But I had already developed my sense of comedy, I suppose. Mm-hmm. So I was a mime. And then I went back to my hometown after trying to be an actor in New York for 6 months and totally bombed out. Got a job tending bar, but I couldn't stop performing. So I would perform for my customers. I taught mime at my old high school, mm-hmm. and performed mime wherever I could. And so then one day, after a terrible accident, I was drinking too much at my own bar. I was in a near fatal car accident, and I realized, I said, I don't want to be a bartender. And I thought to myself, well, I can't do anything else. I mean, what am I going to do? I said, well, I want to do pantomime, but my parents said, you can't make a living doing that ridiculous stuff. So there was a thing called the Whole Earth Catalog, which was a big, thick compendium, a book of all of these alternative lifestyles and things like that. And I found an Israeli mime who had opened a kibbutz in Boulder, Colorado, named Samuel Avital. And I started corresponding with him. And he said, come out to my kibbutz. We do pantomime and study the Kabbalah, the Jewish mystical text. Mm-hmm. So, I was already bar mitzvahed, and I was I knew about Orthodox Jewry. I wasn't thrilled about the Jewish part of it, but to live on a commune and do pantomime all day and farm your own food, this sounded exciting to me. So I drove out to Colorado. And by the time I got to Colorado, somebody had offered Mr. Avital a European tour of his one-man show. So he closed the school and left me a note at the post office with my money back and saying, good luck. Sorry, the school closed, and I'm in Europe. So there I was in the middle of the country with all my possessions in my car. And I figured, well, what can I do now? So I had a sister who lived in Los Angeles, and I drove out to Los Angeles to stay on her couch. And when I got to Los Angeles, I got another bartending job. But because it's LA, there were lots of opportunities to do mime. And I would perform in the park. I met a mime teacher and I got to be part of his troupe, Richmond Shepard's mime troupe. And there I met my partner, my comedy team partner, Caleb Chung.
Mm-hmm.
And we became a very successful mime and comedy duo. And we started doing television and things like that. But by the time I was doing that, I had already been a mime for like 13 years. I was 26.
Wow.
And I was bored with it, frankly. And I said, I want to talk.
Yeah, finally, yes.
I want to talk. So I took a couple of acting classes, and then I also took an improv class. And the improv class, the first one I took was with a group called Off the Wall in Los Angeles. Very funny group of people. And it was, although it was fun and I could keep up with them, it was more like a fencing class. You were constantly making jokes and trying to get the best laugh and trying to top one another. And it was at the end of the day, at the end of the class, I was all wound up and I felt, you know, I would have to smoke a joint and drink a beer to kind of calm down.
Mm-hmm.
Then a friend of mine, a longtime friend of mine, was at a university studying theater, and he had read that Viola Spolin had just opened up a school in LA called the Spolin Center, and would I go down and get some information? He's doing a paper on this woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had never heard of her. Now, I'd been already doing improv with this other group for about 6 months. And although it was fun, you know, I was having a good time. I was thinking, this is it. I'm taking acting classes and improv classes, doing everything you're supposed to do. So I went to find out about it. So I knocked on the door of where the school was on Santa Monica Boulevard. And man answered with another beard. And I said, do you have any information on this Viola Spolin? I'm getting information for a friend. And he said, we really only have this brochure, but if you're interested, why don't you take the class and you'll find out more about it that way. So I figured another improv class, fine. So I went in and I started taking the class, and it was lovely. It was very mellow. It was not high pressure. It was games. It was a lot of fun. And I was enjoying it. So I was taking both the comedy improv and this Spolin improv with this fellow. And about 3 weeks into that workshop, Viola Spolin comes down to visit the class. And he's walking around with like a theater game file card, you know, like she wrote all of her games on these cards. Mm-hmm. And so he was literally just reading off of the card, and we were doing something called a spacewalk. And Viola just looked at him finally and just got up in the middle of that and said, all right, that's it. You don't know what you're doing. Get out.
And that was the first meeting with Viola.
That was the first time I saw her, yeah. Mm-hmm. She just, in the middle of this workshop, she says, that's it. And she fired him right there.
Oh my God.
They went into the lobby, and then we're all looking at like, what's going on? We had no idea. And back she comes by herself, and he's gone, never to be seen again. And she says, well, I'm going to take over the class. So she started the class over.
So what did you think at that point? What did you think of this situation at that moment?
Well, we were all just thunderstruck, you know, wow, Viola Spolin is going to take over this class, you know. We all had the book. And here she was. She was in her late 60s, I think, at the time. She had big jade earrings and a bohemian print dress and steel gray curly hair. And so she took over the class, and we did an exercise. And the first exercise we did was the mirror game. Mm-hmm. just doing the mirror. And now I'm a mime. My whole life was training to imitate people. But this was very different. She kept coaching us to change who the leader was, back and forth in such a way that I could not predict or keep track. And so I started to have a physical reaction to this. And I was struggling with it. And she walked around with a microphone. And I remember her, she just over my shoulder, she's literally yelling in my ear, let it flow, let it flow. And I just couldn't do it. And she finally said, all right, stop. And I'm just thunderstruck. She said, she puts her hand, I'll never forget it. This was the first, she put her hand on my shoulder, and my eyes must have been just doing this, you know. And she addresses the class. She says, well, now you see this young man here, he had a direct experience. He got to see his partner in the mirror without using his head. Then she said, I suspect it's probably the first time in his life he ever saw anybody. Well, when she said that, big bells went off in my head, because she spoke a very big truth about my life. That it was absolutely true. I had spent my life being, you know, I was in an abusive home and all of this. I spent my life being hyper vigilant and worried about how I appeared to people. And I just, and I micro absorbed every interaction as, can I do this? Can I put on a show of who I am? Literally put on a show of who I am. And use humor and disarm people with charm and wit and humor. And literally, I thought that's what improv was all about, being fast, clever, witty, appropriate. And this was completely different. She just exposed me to somebody without, and stripped away all of my tools. And I realized this is very important. So then she went on and we did some other things, and there were a lot of, it was a nice class. And so I went up to her at the end of the class, you know, and she's got her glasses and she's writing notes in her book. And I said, Miss Spolin, excuse me. She said, I want to thank you. She just whirled, don't thank me. Don't thank me. Don't make, it's not me. It's not me. It's the work. Don't make me your guru. Get out. Luckily, that kind of, I don't want to call it abuse, but that kind of reaction I was very used to growing up. And she also came from a Russian Jewish family, and so did I, you know. So she was very explosive that way. But it didn't faze me at all. It just sounded to me like she was making a point.
Especially in this story, the last story, when she said, don't make me guru, it's really kind of like she really was aware what she was saying, that it wasn't abusive to you, it wasn't just her kind of expression.
She was worried I was trying to flatter her, you know, and trying to get, you know, like what did she call it? She said, you know, don't shine the apple and give it to the teacher, you know, don't, you know. And I immediately got that right away, that, you know, it was not about me. It was about, you know, she was very, very wary about being a guru, she did not want that. She did not want to be seen as the instrument of your success, which is so unlike many teachers.
Yeah. So I have a question.
And yeah,
When you left that class, what did you think? Like, you know, like after the whole this experience, you left the class, and what was your, you know, like, wow, what
well,
happened?
I told her the very next sentence, I told her the next words out of my mouth literally were, I'm going to be your apprentice.
Hmm.
And she says, oh, honey, she says, you don't know what you're talking about.
And you were till the end of her life.
It, yeah, this is a very, a story that I tell all the time, the one you just asked me to tell. I tell it in more detail in a blog that I wrote called How I Met Viola Spolin. So if you want to know all of the details, because it's a very funny ending, it's there. But suffice it to say, I became her apprentice, and it was not an easy apprenticeship at the beginning, because I did not get the work at all. I did not understand what she was after. Yet I stuck it out until I had my breakthroughs.
Why do you think you couldn't understand? What made you to be not aware of things happening, and what made this difficult for you?
Well, first of all, I was not my authentic self.
Mm-hmm.
As I told you in my preamble, I was very concerned with how I looked, how I appeared. I was extremely self-conscious, and I had thought I had honed it to such a degree that nobody could really tell. And because I had skill at mimicry, I literally could interact with you, figure out, what's coming from you, and figure out how I would connect with you in a way that wouldn't make you hate me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I suffered from a terrible feeling of worthlessness. I didn't even know that that's what I was suffering from at the time.
Mm-hmm. So you tried to
So
please
I
to
was all exterior.
sorry. So because there is delay, Gary. So you wanted to be pleased. You wanted to please the person you were talking to, right?
Absolutely. I wanted, first of all, not only to please them, but just to not even please them, just make them not hate me the way I basically hated myself
Mm-hmm.
at the time. And again, this was completely, I was unaware of this, because this was long before my therapy and I knew anything about this. I guess I was traumatized in childhood, like many children.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my own version of PTSD. I survived the trauma and the withering attacks from my parents, who were both mentally ill, to sort of survive it by creating a false self.
Mm-hmm.
And that false self was what I presented to the world. And I literally spent my childhood and young adulthood trying to perfect it. And I really thought that's what improv was, is that ability to be that quick, that perceptive, that fast, that you could fool everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my big stumbling block in Viola's class.
Mm-hmm.
I was in my head. She kept saying, "You're in your head." And I remember the day I had my first breakthrough, and so Viola had a great way of just getting to the point, and she didn't want to like point out that I had a breakthrough. She just wanted, she wants you to realize everything on your own. That's the nature of her work. You solve the problem, not her. She's not there to solve your problem. She gives you the problem, you solve the problem. The solving of that problem opens up the flower and you're now transformed. And that was a constant growth. Every problem I solved, I acquired a new skill and a new awareness and a new understanding and a new level of depth of what she was after, and also a little bit about myself. But again, it was not, it was only, that was her process. And so anyway, but I remember that day after the breakthrough, she leaned over to me, you know, because I used to sit next to her in the workshop. I got to be her apprentice. I literally, she found out I lived near her and that I liked to cook. So I became the person who would pick her up and take her to and from the workshop. And when she found out I liked to cook, she would call me up and say, stop at the store and get me a cabbage. I would make meals for them, and we became friends. And but at the same time, she was not telling me anything about how to do this work. Just I kept coming up against those problems, and she could coach me into brilliant work sometimes, but I just couldn't understand what it all was all about. So finally, when I had my big breakthrough, she couldn't help herself. She leaned over and she goes, I leaned in, I said, yeah, Viola. She goes, you realize you had a breakthrough there. And I had already understood. I felt good about myself. I didn't need any affirmation from the teacher. I knew it, which was as the essence of her work. You know it. You don't need it from the teacher. You don't need to be told you're good. I solved that problem. Have this new feeling about yourself. Anyway, so then later on in the car, I'm driving her home, and I said, yeah, I really feel that, like, I got it. And she said, and this is what she said. She says, well, finally, you stop trying to please mama. And I said, you're right. Because I literally, all the work I was doing in Viola's class, because we were friends and I respected her, I was hoping she would think I'm good and like me. Well, she liked me anyway, even when I was terrible. And I didn't get that for a long time. But when she said, you stop trying to please mama, boing, that was it. I had solved the problem for myself and became, my awareness was my own. It was, you know, and I don't attribute it to her. I don't say she gave it to me. I say I found it in her work, in her doing her work with her as my coach.
Is this the story with you jumping on the stage and having this moment with the exercise, the exits? And
yes, exits and entrances was my, yeah. I couldn't get off the stage and I couldn't get on the stage, and I said, damn it. And when I figured out that I just have to just jump onto the stage without any idea of what I'm going to do when I land there. I just want to make everybody, the goal of exits and entrances is that you cannot leave the stage unless you capture everybody's attention on the stage to make your exit. And then when you make an entrance, you must find a way to make sure everybody is aware you have entered the scene. So without destroying the scene, obviously. So I was inventing scenario after scenario after scenario, and then if you didn't make it, in other words, if 3 or 4 people or even one person didn't notice you, the audience would yell, go back, and you'd have to go back and try again. And Viola had called 1 minute, which means the scene was about to end, and I had not made it back onto the stage. And so I leapt onto the stage without any idea what to do. I just said, damn it, I'm going to get on stage before the scene is over if it kills me. And I just leapt, literally with nothing in my mind, zero. Completely, I didn't know what was going to happen once I hit the stage. And I hit the stage, I got everybody's attention, And it was a scene in a medieval town square. And I leapt like 8 feet into the center of the stage so hard that I had to literally crouch down to break my fall. And then in that moment, I rose up and I became this wizard, this with a big cape. And I said, "How dare you not invite me to the king and queen's coronation?" You know, and everybody was afraid of me. And I said, "You do that again, and you will all rue the day." And I leapt off stage. So I made a huge successful entrance and a huge successful exit. And that was my breakthrough. But I didn't find it until I hit the stage. And that truly, to me, is what you have to do when you improvise. If you have the thought in your head of what you want to do, that's a script. Mm-hmm. That's prepared stuff. That's stuff in your back pocket. And sometimes you can abandon it because you're going to yes and whatever somebody else gives you. I think that's all bullshit, by the way. But if you come on completely without an agenda and let the environment and the connection to everybody on stage fill you, it will become apparent what you need to do. And to me, that's truly how to improvise. We don't all get there, and I certainly don't do it all the time. But that's my goal, and that was a successful one.
So I have a question following to what you just have said. This was and I remember that breakthrough story. But if you would recall, what were the next ones, big ones? Like they were always connected to your trying to impress Viola or somebody who's watching you, or there were some other stuff which were blocking you or were challenging you. What else came as this breakthrough later on, after the whole time when you?
Oh my goodness. So many. I remember the first time that slow motion, mm-hmm. the side coaching of slow motion plugged me back into a scene. We were doing a scene about spaceships, and I was a crew member on the spaceship. And whenever I felt insecure about what I was doing on stage, I'd ask a question, "Hi, Captain, what would you like me to do now?" And then Viola would yell, "No questions." And, because I was asking for direction, mm-hmm. And so I'd say, "No questions." And then I would get in my head and I'm thinking, so then I try to do something, and then I felt panicky because I didn't really know what to do. So I was taking a regular method acting class at the same time. And I remember hearing my teacher say, "Use what's going on with you in the scene." Mm-hmm. So what was going on with me was I was nervous and I was scared. So I said, "Oh, I'm just going to get more scared and more nervous." And suddenly I'm getting like so hyper and nervous and scared that I start not hearing everybody. And there's 4 other people on stage with me. And I'm just literally running around. I'm going to the where and trying to do things. And I'm panicking, and I'm everything is rushing by me like a whirlwind. And I'm completely disconnected from the scene, but I'm trying to, go big with it. Mm-hmm. And then I hear Viola say, "Slow motion." Now, slow motion is not moving slowly, which many people think it is. It's allowing the space around you to slow down, where you can feel that you're sort of in the eye of this great hurricane in a still, quiet spot. And you elongate the time it takes you to think, the time it takes you to see, and you're not moving slowly, but you're moving through a much slower space. And I got this warm blanket over me of this warm, slow motion space. And suddenly I see the guy who's playing the captain, and I see the two aliens off in the corner, and I start to see the environment of the ship, and I slow way down and I start to connect, listen to the dialogue, connect to the dialogue, and I got plugged back into the scene. And wow. So, you know, using your own personal panic or your own personal emotions is also something Viola told us not to do.
Mhm.
She would always yell. She said, "My work is not psychodrama." She'd say, "Don't use your own tears. Use the character's tears." And so that's conflicting information I was getting from one study to another study. Both were valuable. And I remember telling Viola, you know, I'm taking a class with Jeff Corey, the great method acting teacher. And she goes, "Well, he's a method man, but he's got integrity." So,
So in
she
other
was
words,
never critical of any what?
so in other words, she taught you to be present, right?
Yeah, not only present, but she gave me the time to be present, because I was completely lost. I was completely cut off. And I remember her telling, you know, she said, you know, what she's trying to do in all of her work is to connect people to one another. She said, and she said this in an interview. I don't know if you saw that interview. She says, you know, I try to do three things. I try to put a thread through them, she said. First of all, connect them, one, to themselves,
Then
two, to each other, and three, to the environment. And when you have that thread and you're connected to yourself, to your fellow player, and to the environment, you cannot help but be there in that world you're sharing with whoever's on stage with you. If you're not connected, that's where you get into trouble. That's where you get into your head, and you have to invent a situation, a line, a piece of funny business, or get a laugh, or something else. And that disconnect always enraged her, whenever you would disconnect from that. But that's what side coaching is for, to find, what can I say that will reconnect you without telling you what to do?
Yeah, I experienced her warm up with the slow spacewalk, and it's really like
Spacewalk.
it's really like a meditation thing. So she was really teaching meditation, in other words, for her students, which is really brilliant.
Yeah, yeah. The spacewalk connects you to yourself, puts you in your body, makes you aware of the space around you, makes you aware that the space you're in is other players are in. So when she says, you know, see your fellow player, let your fellow player see you through the space, she's using space as this medium. See, space is an actual physical dimension. And when you become aware of it, that's where the theater magic happens. When you don't see space, it's because you're in your head, imagining, pretending, thinking what you can say, coming up with an offer that might work. Anytime you go in your head, you've disconnected on some level to the scene or your fellow partner.
So,
and that's it.
I have a question. Is miming at that time helping you? Like when you were doing all the exercise with Viola, was at the time your all miming skills were helping you or not?
It's so funny you say that, because at the time I was studying with Viola Spolin, I was also teaching at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts as a mime instructor.
Mhm.
And I was teaching people how to, do this and pull on ropes and lean on, objects and create what they call in the mime world illusions,
Mhm.
which they are. They're illusions. And it does give you mastery of your body,
Mhm.
like a dancer. But I remember you're getting me to tell all of my old stories that
I
I've
know.
written down on my blog, but I'll tell you anyway.
You can tell them we have collection all together in one place.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so this is so there was an exercise Viola has to help you make your objects more visible to to yourself and the audience, because people would be like, oh, I'm going to put on a shirt, and they just go like that. And so she say, all right, now you're going to do that. You're going to take a space object, and then you're going to do this exercise called begin and end. Now, so people would like, in other words, if somebody was like opening a bottle, they just go like this and they drink and they put it down. But you say, now break it into every motion has a beginning and an ending. And I want you to call out begin when you begin an action. And when you complete that action, call end and begin the next one. All in, so it's like she's making you an animator, like you're drawing each picture so that when you string them together, it's that action. So like if I just take the bottle and I go like this and I put the bottle down, that's, everybody knows that you're drinking something. Okay, but she would say, all right, now begin. And the first begin is, where's the bottle? Right? So I'd go, begin, end. 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 And you'd break it down. And then what do you do with the cap? Begin, end. 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 Begin, and begin, and you, right? So then you do it a third time, and you'd put it back together, and it would be like, now I can really see that bottle cap, and there's liquid in the bottle, and you put it down, and the detail shows up. Great exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So first time we did this, I felt, oh my gosh, we're going to do an exercise that I'm going to blow her away because I'm a mime. So I remember I said, okay, I'm going to take out a pack of cigarettes and smoke a cigarette. And so I take the cellophane off and then open the packet, crumble the thing, throw it away, put the thing back in my pocket, and it's a routine, right? So, and then we do begin, end. And I broke it down because, and I did it again. And so then Viola would ask the audience, she said, was there a difference from the first time he did it to the third time? Now, normally, with a person who's not good at mime, absolutely, that creates visible space. the audience said, no, we saw it both the same in both times. So then she comes over to me and she looks at me and she says, let me ask you a question. Did you really see that, or were you drawing us a picture? So I said, oh, I was drawing you a picture. She says, and it's a very nice picture, honey. We saw it, but you didn't see it. For you, that was choreography. And I said, you're right. So she said, all right, she says, this was her brilliance. She knew exactly how to solve the problem. She'd say, all right, throw that one away. Pick a new object quickly, right now, pick one. She didn't give me a chance to even think or to go back into my Rolodex and say, you know, what other mime bit do I know? So I grabbed an orange. And she said, now peel the orange. So I peel the orange. And she says, now begin end with that orange. But she said, because you're so good at this, she said, I'm going to ask you to break it down 100 times more than you think you should. And not only that, but I'm going to have you yell at the top of your voice, begin. And then when you say end, I'm going to have you exhale all your breath. So now I have to like break it down into 1,000 pieces and go, begin, end, begin, end. And I'm just, by the end, my voice is hoarse and I'm hyperventilating. And so I'm a little dizzy, and I remember, you know, peeling that navel orange. It was a navel orange, big bumpy red orange skin. And it had the big navel, you know, in the top of it. And it was a juicy orange. And I remember, so then at the third time, after I did all of the begin end, which took quite a while, she said, okay, now just throw that away and just peel that orange. And I would take the orange and I'd stick my finger in the orange. And literally, the second I put my thumbnail into that orange and peeled back that first bit of rind, I saw spray go off the orange. And the whole class went, because they saw it too. I could literally almost, to this day, I can almost smell that orange. That orange was more real than a real orange. And then Viola would just go, well, there. And so she said, for you, Gary, she said, now we're not just going to ask what was the object. We're going to ask the audience, what texture was it? What color was it? Because she said, you have that ability to go there. Mm-hmm. And that was another seminal moment in my training. Mm-hmm. Space is one of my big passions. Her use of space object work. And so when I realized this, I went back to my mime class at the American Academy in Pasadena. And I started teaching this. I started doing spacewalks, and I started using space and begin, end. And they called me into the office and they said, you know, you're not teaching them to walk against the wind. You're not teaching them to pull ropes. You're not teaching them to make pantomime sketches. And I said, you know, that's so unimportant. So they said, well, we're going to have to let you go. So I was literally fired from my mime teaching position. Mm-hmm. But space was way more important than pantomime. Mm-hmm. Pantomime was so trivial to me by that point. Mm-hmm. It's a nice skill to have, but it's not anything near the profundity of what Viola was showing me.
So there is sometimes a discussion in our improv world about what's the difference, because some people call what we call it object work or whatever it is, they call it miming or pantomime or whatever. So what for you, what's the difference between pantomime and miming and space work and the understanding you got from the work with Viola?
Well, like she said, are you drawing a picture for the audience, or are you seeing the object yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're drawing a picture for the audience, that means you've already constructed the picture in your mind, which means you really aren't taking the time to see the space. So one time Viola said, she said, she was asked, what are you trying to do with your work? She said, I'm trying to make the invisible visible. Now, if you're doing pantomime, all you want the audience to do is recognize what you're doing. You yourself don't have to pay attention to it because you've got the choreography, the dance steps.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a script. Again, you're not improvising. But if you take the time to see an object in detail, there might be something in the seeing of that object that will lead you away from the script to something maybe new, something that you didn't plan or think of. But the use of space as pantomime, you're only going to do what you thought of. You're only going to go through the motions,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that it's there so that you can tell the bigger story. But the story might be the little peel of glued label on that pill bottle becomes your story. Why they go, well, that I was trying to go to a suicide, and they go, but what if it just becomes about uncorking that bottle? You cannot get the bottle cap off. That's another exercise called difficulty with a small object.
Mm-hmm.
What if it became that? What if the story was about that? See, and this is another big issue I take with a lot of improv training. So much focus is put on story. Story is Paul Sills called it the trap.
Mm-hmm.
You get caught in a story, you're shooting for a result already.
Mm-hmm.
You're not solving problem after problem after problem, and then whatever problem becomes fascinating to you, that's where the story goes. So in other words, the focus is, Viola would say, the focus is the tail of the comet. You grab the tail of the comet and let it take you where it will.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, what's left behind, we see as the story. But if you see that overarch of the story ahead of time, then you've written a play and it's just not been rehearsed.
Yeah, you're just going somewhere where you expect to, and it's not improvising, right? It's not discovery.
It's not improvising. It's not improvising. It's manipulating people to get the result you're looking for. And literally, I thought that's what improv was all about, manipulating everybody to, or becoming part of what everybody's doing so that you fit in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that yes and thing. Again, I'm not a big fan of yes and.
Mm-hmm.
But story is what's left behind.
Mm-hmm.
Viola, I tell this to my students all the time. She says, grab the tail of that comet and let it pull you through the scene. And then she said, and what's left in your wake is stardust. She was very poetic.
So I have another question which comes when we are talking about her exercises. If you could mention two exercises, one what is in your opinion, one which is the most known exercise of Viola, and the other which is the least known exercise of Viola.
Well, I think the most known is the mirror work, right? The mirroring.
Yeah, I would agree.
And it's foundational. It's following the follower. If you can get to follow the follower, where the initiation is no longer an issue. It's no longer you're the leader, now you're the follower, but you're both in this follow the follower situation where it will take you both to a place neither of you will expect. That's the journey you want to get on, following the follower. And it's the most, I think it's one of the most foundational and most important things you can get out of Viola's early work. The most obscure bit of her work, that's an interesting question. I would say it's the last game in her book, which is Excursions into the Intuitive.
What is that?
Well, let's see. Excursions into the Intuitive. It's, oh, there's transformation of relationship, which is also beautiful. But in Excursions into the Intuitive is being so present that you, she says, you sit on an empty stage with other actors and you get into a space, into that intuitive space, and you say, you let an impulse move you into action. In other words, don't have one in mind. Don't say, oh, I'm going to get up and I'm going to open my grocery store. Just sit there on an empty stage, be present with everybody, and allow yourself to be moved into action intuitively. Now, if you don't understand, if you haven't gotten to that point in the work, you will not understand being moved by an intuitive impulse. And it's very easy to say, I thought of that like a nanosecond before I did it. Right? And if you're honest with yourself, you will pass that one by. And then once you're into it, other players are also going to be compelled to act out on their impulse. And that excursion into the intuitive will take you all into an unknown collaboration, a collaboration where you don't know what's going to happen next, but you're just going to stay with what's going on. That's one of her favorite side coaches. Go with what's going on. Go with what's going on. Don't initiate. Don't make something happen. Don't yes and somebody's offer. Although it probably looks like yes and because you're becoming part of a larger whole. You're adding a part to a larger whole. But if you think, what can I add? She said, well, you've gone into your writer's garret and you've written something and you want to introduce it into this scene, don't you? And she said, there's a lot of better writers than you typing away in their little garrets, no playwriting. But it's so tempting to playwright, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And I think a lot of improv is playwriting, but not being called playwriting.
Yeah, I agree. But I have then another question, which is just me asking you for explanation for me to understand it. What's the term she's using in the book, which is called POC, which is a point of concentration? How would you explain?
She changed that word in the later editions. She didn't like it,
Mhm.
Point of concentration is what you put your attention on.
Mhm.
That's the problem you're trying to solve, and that's the focus that you're trying to achieve. But she said after this was before computers, you know, she didn't like the word point of concentration anymore, but she said because it's too static. In
Mhm.
other words, it's just a fixed point. She said so she changed the word to focus.
Mhm.
What do you focus on? Because you can focus close up, and you can focus so that you can take in more of the scene. So the focus is a much more elastic concept than point of concentration. So literally, she got rid of point of concentration, and you should substitute the word focus. What is the focus of the scene?
Mhm.
You know, in other words, she would say, what is the focus of football? The ball.
Yeah.
Everybody puts their attention on that ball. Whither the ball goes, that's how the game falls out.
Mhm.
But if she said the ball was just planted in the middle of the set, it's not going to move, and you move all around it. She said that's just too static.
Mhm.
So POC, get rid of that word. It doesn't mean anything anymore. She was always trying to get rid of words because she said words are labels. They stand for something. They're even the word intuitive. She got tired of saying the word intuition.
Mhm.
And she said, because the minute you think the word, then you can stop dealing with it.
Mhm.
Oh, it's the intuition. Yeah, move on. You know, intuition is a gigantic word.
It is.
So she would just say, let's just call it X. We don't know what it is. So she started calling it the X area. But she was always trying to get rid of labels. In other words, get down to the essence of it. And literally anything can become your focus. And whatever your focus is, the solving of that problem, putting all of your attention on that one thing, it's like that's the portal into the unknown. Through that comes out everything.
And also, again, the focus brings us to present, right? To being here and now.
You
Because
must be present. You cannot focus on something without being present with it.
Mhm.
If you're not focusing, that's what a word does. A word is a memory, is a reference to an idea, to a concept, to a one-time, like the word vacation, right? That's the past, unless you're in the middle of vacationing.
Mhm.
Now it's not a vacation, you are in it. But the minute you said I went on a vacation, it loses all of the wonderful experiences and the you know, the jumps in the pool and the drinks by the ocean and all of the things that make vacation vacation. So it's an interesting dichotomy.
Yeah.
She probably had revised her book 6 times if she was still alive by now.
Yeah. That's many authors who would probably do that with books. But yeah, her work evolved through the years, right? So
It did, and it was still evolving, and I'm really lucky to say that I got to the benefit of her later years.
Mhm.
Because when she was in the early years, in the 70s and 80s, she was still exploring it. I mean, it was a constant exploration, but you know, I got the benefit of her more evolved thinking on things,
Mhm.
and I feel really fortunate. And again, that's why I don't want to. Everybody's saying, you know, well, you're trying to preserve Viola in stone, and no, I'm not. I'm trying to say that, you know, her work, she uncovered a dimension that is worth exploring, but she drew the first map. So you got to go along that map before you get to the edges of her work.
Mm-hmm.
If not, I'll never forget, I was talking to an improviser in LA at an audition at my agent's office one day. And he goes, and he was kind of full of himself. I'm not going to give his name because he's still around. And he goes, he says, so what do you do? I said, oh, I'm with the Spolin players. I teach Viola Spolin's work. And he goes, oh yeah, Spolin. Yeah, we're way beyond that. And I just looked at him like, how can you be way beyond that? You know what I mean? In other words, he thinks that Spolin was the building like kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
And they're evolving into you know, new forms and stuff like that. Viola, oh yeah, that's that you know, those fun little games, and it's just not worth talking to somebody like that.
So I think everyone here listening to this and other clips which are online knows that you can have a great impression of Viola Spolin. That's also my experience, that those who studied with Chris Johnston or their close, they all can do impressions of their beloved teachers. But what are your favorite quotes of Viola?
Oh my gosh, so many.
So many. Give me 3 your favorite ones.
Well, I think I told you one of them. Focus is the tail of the comet. Hold on tight, and what's left in your wake is stardust. Make the invisible visible. One of my favorite ones is she one time she came up to us and she says, all right, everybody, she said, give me your definition of creativity. And we're all scratching our heads thinking, it's creativity, oh gosh, you know. And so we couldn't come up with a good definition of creativity. She says, well, I'll tell you what it isn't. Creativity is not the clever rearranging of the known.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that one.
Yeah, that reminds me another quote or another thought from Stephen Nachmanovich, who I interviewed before, because that leads to having a pattern. So you know how to solve the problem on the scene, or you know something. So you use the same techniques and patterns and your tricks. So you stop improvising. You're just getting the same things again and again.
You're rearranging cleverly.
Yeah, the same things.
Absolutely. And that clever rearranging can be funny and entertaining, but it's just, and people laugh because they recognize it, but they don't laugh because they've been introduced to something new. Mm-hmm. And she would say, you know, another one of her sayings is, the creative act transforms the one who is in it. Mm-hmm. In other words, and that was her motto on the Spolin Center: spontaneity, awareness, transformation. Mm-hmm. She said the heart of improvisation is transformation. Mm-hmm. If you are not changed by what you do on stage, you're not improvising. You are going over old ground. Mm-hmm. And it may be new to the audience, but if it's not new to you, you missed. But a lot of people are content with that because it feeds the ego. It makes the audience happy. When the audience is happy, you're happy, and you get into that codependent, make the audience happy. Another funny saying, it's in her book. She goes, when an actor comes off the stage and she says, "Oh, the audience is terrible," and Viola would say, "Well, if the audience is terrible, then go out there and punish them."
Gary, if you could summarize, I don't know if it's possible, but just came to my mind. If you could summarize Viola's improvisation gift, what she gave us, or like in one sentence, what's summarize her work, what would that be? I know it's not easy.
She gave us an approach, a fun, exciting, non-judgmental approach to the unknown.
Oh, that's lovely. I love it.
The unknown should not be fearful. The unknown should be exciting, stimulating. You know, we should all want to explore it. We should not be afraid of it.
Mm-hmm. There is a great thing about Viola, because you were not only her friend and first student and friend, but also your private life is attached to the whole story, because as far as I know, first of all, your wife is Polish, or has a Polish roots, which
her father is Polish, her mother is English, her father is Polish.
So that makes me smile because I'm Polish, but also you met your wife through the workshop, as far as I know.
No, not through the workshop. Tina was invited by neighbors of Viola Spolin to come up to her birthday party.
Oh yeah.
To do a belly dance. Because Tina was a belly dancer, and she worked for a telegram company that they called them bellygrams, and so they thought that for Viola's birthday they'd deliver a belly dance gram to her for her birthday, and the party was at Viola's house, and Tina's friends lived just down the hill on Woody Trail. And they came up, and I was catering the party. I was Viola's apprentice. I scrubbed the floors. I cooked the food. I ran errands. I did stuff for her, and I was making the food and preparing the food, and they were all upstairs, and I was down in the lower part of the house. Making the food, and in comes this exotic looking woman in a, you know, that's her right there. And she's, so she comes to do, I have pictures of that party of her doing that bellygram. And as a matter of fact, Viola's husband, Colmus, did this little photo collage of us.
Oh.
And this was the very first meeting that I had with my wife. And he cut our pictures out, and then he put Viola's picture next to it.
Oh, so
and her husband, Colmus, was a collagist. And there he is above us. That's a collage of Colmus and Viola up there, that red one. And so I got to talking to this lovely girl in this exotic makeup with these symbols on her fingers. And 2 years later, we were married on Viola's birthday, and we had a big party, which both now my wife and I both catered that party. It was a big Russian. We made pierogies, and we froze vodka in ice with roses in them, and it was a lovely, lovely party. And so now my anniversary is Viola's birthday.
That's a really great story. um, there was one more thing I wanted to ask you because we talked about your first meeting with Viola. So I wanted to ask
Yes.
you about the last meeting with Viola.
Oh my. Well, Viola started having strokes when she was like 82. No, maybe 80. For several years before she died, she had started having small strokes. So I would go visit them all the time. But Viola was unable to talk after a couple of years. And she would sit in her chair and listen to the radio. Every once in a while, she would just try to say something, and it used to be very frustrating because here's a woman who was the ultimate communicator, who was just reduced to look at, and she just go, oh. And eventually she just resigned herself to the fact that she could no longer communicate. But we still talked to her. She still sat in her chair. Her husband and I would talk, and I would be there quite a lot during her last days. And she had two nurses. Colmus was her husband, who was 11 years her junior. He was younger than she was. The sweetest man in the world. And so I would just go to keep him company and help with Viola. And the nurses were doing all of the stuff. But they were taking good care of her. And I remember the day I was on a sound stage doing voiceover on a movie when Colmus called to say that Viola had died during the night. And I'll never forget that day. So I can't tell you the exact day. I do remember when she had her first couple of strokes, and I went to visit her in the hospital. This is when she still had words. And she was not a very sentimental woman. She was a very practical woman. And I remember sitting behind her at the head of her bed. It was one of those hospital beds that are, and I guess everybody had left, and I'm just sitting behind her there. And I just leaned in close to her and I said, Viola, I love you. And she said, I know, dear.
Oh. So, how do you think she would like to be remembered?
Oh gosh, I have no idea. To say that I knew her did not mean that I knew her as a soulmate.
Mm-hmm.
I was as close as I think any of her family members were, except maybe for her husband. Well, I think what I'm doing, how she wanted to be remembered was, she is remembered as the founder of this fantastic body of work. And when it became obvious that because of the way she conducted her life as a non-guru, mm-hmm. and she allowed others to take credit for much of and advertise themselves as the great teachers. She just didn't want to have anything to do with that. When she died, I made it my mission to make sure that her work, that everybody knew about her work, because when I came to Seattle from LA, nobody had heard of her. And yet they had two huge improv companies here in Seattle. And most of their students never were introduced to her work. Or if they were, it was not as her work. It was renamed or reinterpreted and to the point where it's unrecognizably her work. And that always made me angry. And so I said, you know, and for a long time I felt like I was the sole voice, because there was very few people teaching her work to the level that she gave it to me. Now again, she would always say, and you can read in her work, she always acknowledged her teachers and the sources of her inspiration. Her teacher was this fantastic sociologist, Neva Boyd, and her work inspired Viola's work. Of course, my work is inspiring Viola's work, and I'm not there to, like I say, make a monument of it, but to promote and explore it, and to reassociate her name with it. And I think now, after, what is it, 25 years after her passing now, maybe, was it 30 years she's been gone? No, 25, no, 30 years she's been gone. And with Aretha Sills and Paul Sills, of course, was doing it, but he had the same problem Viola had, in that he was not a self-promoter.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but somebody needed to promote her work, God damn it. So it was up to me.
Thanks God.
And now, yes, and now with the fact that her granddaughter is teaching her work and being recognized as a wonderful teacher as well, who does, I've spoken with Aretha, and she completely gets Viola's work and philosophy. And we both share that. I feel like, there's a couple of people in the world raising Viola's profile.
Yeah.
And so if I had anything to do with it, that was my mission, and has always been my mission. And I was told along the way, stop mentioning this Viola Spolin. You know, what do you do? Why don't you, you know, what's your reputation? I said, it all comes from her. And if I don't do that, then she called them predators. The people who took her work and didn't give her credit, she called them predators. Mm-hmm. And the fellow that she fired in my original improv class, she called a predator. She would not allow his name to be mentioned. The rest of her life, she would become apoplectic if she heard his name. So she had a bitterness that, unfortunately, I think I inherited. And early on, as I was trying to do this in my career as promoting Viola's work, you know, I kind of inherited that same bitterness, and I might have been perceived as an asshole here and there, but you know, it's just that I'm a big disciple. And I want to be recognized as a disciple. And I think that I have a level of ability that she didn't give me, but that I discovered working with her. She turned me into the teacher I am. And unfortunately, it took that many years. And I'm trying to do the same now with others. But I don't have a relationship with a student the way she had a relationship with me. And I'm constantly looking for people to mentor. Now, obviously, it's not going to be the genius, but it's going to be the apprentice passing the work along.
Yeah.
I'm no longer the apprentice. I'm now the master. That's a funny story too.
Yeah.
So if I have any mastery of her work, it's a recognition that her work is a complete, endless horizon. But you have to start with her map to get to the edge of the horizon before you can go beyond it. And she always used to say, she said, if one of my games doesn't solve your problem, invent one. That's what I did. But her genius was she invented 200 that cover all the bases. And you should at least play those games before you reinvent one of her games to call it one of yours. I think.
Mm-hmm.
I've made my own variations on her work, and I'm happy to have done it. She would be proud that I've done it, and but it's just variations of her work.
Yeah.
I have not broken the ground she broke.
Oh, thank you, Gary, for sharing that, because we all know, and we all really should be thankful for the Viola's work and for your work to spread that. And also my
Thank you.
experience is to know a lot of these games which change the names or are sometimes taught differently, which is okay. But also I think there is a great value to go back to her book, to her work, and to see what the exercise was about, because sometimes between the Viola and the teachers, 5 generations later on, the main thing which was there is sometimes missing, and it's sometimes good to go back and just get this.
It is, and if they change a game of Viola's, they should change it because it didn't solve the problem. But to change it just for the sake of novelty, unfortunately, so many people have done, or just to rename a game so that they can lay claim to it, to create a reputation, should be discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
And play the game of hers before you mess with it, so you understand what her game was trying to do. And that would be my advice.
So let's go from improv to something,
Yes.
to something else what you are doing.
So something else which we are doing.
Yeah, because you are not only an improviser and teacher, and you not only carry heritage of Viola Spolin, but also you are an actor and
Yes.
did a lot of funny things. I was watching all the clips online and I was laughing, and it was such a great pleasure to see you all in all of those roles you played, which were plenty, and I'm sure that online is just a little tiny bit of that. So there's this work which you've done with Chang. What was the name of
Schwartz and Chung. My partner Caleb Chung. We met in Richmond Shepard's mime class, and we became a comedy team called Schwartz and Chung. And I finally convinced Caleb after a while to get rid of the white face, and we became more of a. And I would provide a lot of sound effects for him. And that's where I started to get my voiceover chops done. And we were a team for about 17 years, entertaining children in Los Angeles for many, many years, and doing corporate work and corporate shows and some TV appearances. And when I got a job on a TV series that we were both up for, and he didn't get it, I went on to be a large fox in a with a big rubber nose and a wonderful children's series called Zoobly Zoo. Caleb went into his garage and started building robots. And he built robots for Robot Wars, which was a TV show at the time. And then he got a job designing toys at Mattel Toys. And he spent 10 years being their premier toy designer. And then he went off on his own after 10 years, and he invented the Furby. You know the Furby?
I think so. Yeah.
The little creature that is a little animatronic furry Tamagotchi.
Which you
Well,
take
that's
care
his
of.
invention.
Oh my God.
And Yeah, he's now a multi-millionaire and lives in Idaho.
That's a great story.
And you know, but we're still very dear friends. As a matter of fact, we're going to vacation in Big Sur together in a couple of weeks. And so my partner Caleb and I were a comedy team for many years, and then after that, I got into voiceover work.
Mm-hmm. So I will post under this interview some links with this clips.
Oh yeah.
Because
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think people should watch that. So what, if you could recall, because we don't have time to mention all of the things you did with him, but if you could mention one thing which you really remember and sticks with you, which was the biggest fun you've done with him.
With Caleb? Oh my.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we had so many wonderful adventures. Um, uh, we did a TV pilot called Off the Wall, and we did it because they wanted us, because we did it. We were very famous for a pantomime routine where Caleb was a spaceman, and I provided all of the sound effects, and it was quite a fun thing. That's what they hired us for. But then they wanted us to be more part of the cast. They were trying to do sort of a Saturday Night Live kind of a thing. And they paired us with a wonderful British music hall comedian named, oh my gosh, I've forgotten his name now, but lovely man, wonderful actor, very funny, very, and they said, why don't you do something else? Now, Caleb and I both had worked on becoming chimpanzees for different reasons. I learned to be a chimpanzee because I was in the film Quest for Fire,
we will talk
where
about
we had to study chimpanzee behavior, and I learned how to be a chimp. Caleb was the prototype for Cheetah in the Tarzan movie, and they built a chimpanzee costume around him. So he learned how to chimp for a different reason. But we both had great chimps. So we came up with this idea that we were famous, like Jane Goodall chimp scientists, and we were being interviewed in this sort of Alistair Cook type British talk show. And we just improvised it once. They shot it. We just improvised it where we were two serious scientists who slowly become chimpanzees. And it was sort of like we caught lightning in a bottle, and it's a hilarious little bit.
Yeah.
So that was a really fun bit. I don't know if you saw that one.
Yeah, I saw that. It's great.
Yeah.
Okay, and I really love it, and it's really funny. Gary, okay, so you not only were doing that work for children, but you also, as you mentioned, you were playing in one of my favorite movies too, the Quest for Fire.
Quest for Fire, yeah.
Which I will say in Polish for folks maybe who are watching this in Polish is Walka o ogień. So this is a...
Walka o ogień.
Oh, great.
Bardzo dobrze.
Bardzo dobrze, Gary. So Walka o ogień is the movie you played in Quest for Fire. And that's it's great on many levels. And what I think, I had this thought today that it's the movie which is actually gibberish movie, right? Because
no, it's not gibberish.
There is a language.
There, we had to learn a language of 200 words that was invented by Anthony Burgess.
Oh my God.
Who wrote the language for Clockwork Orange. You know, Anthony Burgess, the author who wrote A Clockwork Orange. He was the linguist for Clockwork Orange.
Okay.
Yeah, he wrote the book Clockwork Orange. Anyway, they hired him to invent a Proto-European language.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so we have as a matter of fact, I have an Ulam English dictionary of these 200 words. And they all had Indo-European roots, like big was Meg, Tyr was animal, Straya was stripes, like Tyr Straya was a tiger, Tyr Meg was a mammoth, Ogozi, Ogozi, look, look, look. Ors was bear, like Ursa, all of these things. And so we learned a lot of, and we also had to do physical gestures with them. And so it sounded gibberish, but the director, Jean-Jacques Arnaud, famous French director, said, look, only use the words if there's no other way to communicate. He said, because we don't want people just like using language, because language was only because you couldn't get it across any other way. So only about 20 or 30 words end up in the entire film. And mostly it's grunts and gesture. But I do remember a saying in Ulam. You want me to say it?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So it's ich naka brat. Ich menje. No, ich naka piom. Yeah, ich naka piom, ich menje brat. Which means he is not heavy. He is my brother.
That's great.
Ich is he, nacha, piom. Ich, menje, mine, brat, brother.
That's a great story. I love it. And I love, there is one scene which I really love, and it's you in this scene when the fire.
It's the big oops.
Oops. Yeah. So you almost, or at that point, your character, not you, but your character,
Yes.
destroyed the biggest gift.
I was the key. Yes, I was the keeper of the fire. And they kept me in a little cave because I, for some reason, had the magical ability to keep the fire alive in this little cage. I could stoke it. And so that was about, I was kind of like this, like shamanistic character, but I was a little scrawny. I was the only bald-headed one in the movie. And then the fire goes out after a big attack, and they spend the whole movie looking for fire. And then they find a tribe who can make fire, and they bring it back. And at the end of the movie, after this long quest, they bring it back, and the tribe is like freezing and surviving on this little island. And they bring it back, and because it's my baby, I'm like so overjoyed. I grab the fire, and I'm so thrilled. And I'm kind of like also the village idiot at the same time. I'm like an idiot savant. And I fall into the water, put the fire out after this long whole movie of finding fire.
That's
yeah, that's a really fun scene.
Yeah.
Although during the shoot, that water was so cold that I ended up with hypothermia.
Oh my God.
I went to the hospital.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh geez. But what I admire that in that scene is that that I would really laugh, because it makes me really laugh when when you just so excited and you fall, and
my baby came back.
Yeah, and I know you from these clips which I watched also, that you make such a great funny scenes, but you really can keep your not keep face straight and not laugh.
Oh yeah.
So in that scene, it's visible, because I'm watching it, and I could imagine like being, sitting next to the director and just watching them and laughing. But you are like super serious, but also.
Oh my goodness. Oh yeah. Well, in the first version of the script, they tore me apart. They literally attacked me and tore me limb from limb. But then they rewrote it because they thought that that was too violent for the hero tribe to do. So they said, Gary, you're going to run across the lake and fall into a hole and drown. And so they shot the scene where I run away after I realized what I've done and I killed the fire. So I run away, but they didn't make a hole for me to drown in. And the marsh was just filled with like ice chunks and mud and vines. And I kept looking for a place to like fall into a hole so that I could go under the surface of the water. And I'm running and I'm running and I'm running. And I could hear from the shore them yelling at me, die already. I finally pulled myself under and it didn't work. So they finally dug a hole and I ran to the hole and I died. And then they shot a scene of me under the water looking like dead, you know, holding my breath. None of that made it into the film, but that's when I got hypothermia.
But I wanted to ask you, where was this movie recorded? Was it in States or in Europe? Where was it?
Well, that's a really interesting story also. I don't know how much time we have, but it was originally a 20th Century Fox film. And it was, we were doing the pre-production in London with oodles of money and everybody was having a wonderful time. And then it was going to be shot in Iceland and Africa. So all of our scenes were supposed to be shot in Iceland. But in 1980, the American actors had an actors strike. At the time, the film was already in motion. So the film shut down. And they had elephants already on boats to Iceland. And they had already emptied out an remote Icelandic village for us to live in for nine weeks. Gone. And it took a year and a half for me to come back into the picture. By the time, so they went to Africa to shoot all of that. And by the time it came back to shoot in Iceland, Iceland was no longer the location. So we shot in northern Canada. So it was, the locations were Scotland, Iceland, Scotland, Africa, and Canada. My stuff was all in Canada.
That's good to know. I was really curious. Where was it?
Yeah.
Where that brought you?
Yeah.
But that goes to another exciting thing you do is just voice acting, which is also many things you do in that. And I found out that you gave your voice to few characters, especially two of them are really, really known in the game world.
Yes.
And I didn't know that, and I don't know the games because I don't play.
Right.
So how did you find your way to that kind of work?
You know, it's so funny because when I go to these Comic Cons now, these game expositions, they say, you know, how do you become a voice actor? And I said, well, don't start like I did as a mime. So I said, I ended up being seen and not heard, and now I'm heard and not seen. And I got very lucky in Hollywood, and I got to join what's called a looping group, an ADR group of actors who provide voices for the backgrounds of all films and television. And you have to improvise that dialogue. They record it and then they push it back into the background to make it sound like an authentic crowd. So wherever there's people in a scene, like in a hotel lobby or on the street or in a restaurant, the background extras are told to be very quiet while they film the main actor's dialogue. And then they bring in improvisers afterwards to fill in the backgrounds. I did that for 16 years and it was a wonderful, wonderful job because it incorporated my ability to do accents, to mimic people, so I could voice alike various actors, and as well as improvised dialogue. And I got to work with a very talented group of people. And so that 16 years was in the 90s, 80s and 90s. And late 90s, video games started becoming popular. So by that time, I had a voice agent. And so I started auditioning for video games, early video games. But then when I moved to Seattle, the video game industry is now bigger than movies. So I had already had a background in voiceover work. So that's what I do primarily, or did primarily, up here in the Seattle area.
Wow. So you are giving a voice to two very strong, popular characters.
Yes,
And
Team Fortress 2 is the game. Team Fortress 2. It's a first-person shooter game where I play two characters: a black, one-eyed Scottish bomber named Demo Man, and a big, gigantic character named Heavy Weapons Guy,
so
who has a big gun named Sasha. I've got my gun. And that was a lot of fun to do.
That's really great things. I had an idea for like interviewing just few little questions for
Sure.
Hello, Heavy. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. How are you, Horisha? I'm good, good.
I'm very good. Thank you for agreeing to this little interview. Can I ask you, where are you from?
Where am I from? Who wants to know? I'm from Mother Russia. That's all I will say. You don't need to know where I'm from.
So you live now in States, or you still live in Russia?
I go where the job takes me. You need somebody killed? Some little baby man to make cry? Call me!
So that's
I kill them for you.
Oh, that's your job. You're killing.
That's what I do.
I see you're really excited about it.
I love killing.
Do you miss your motherland?
No, yet.
Yet?
Food is very bad. Give me good sandwich. Nom, nom, nom. Love sandwich. Gives me power.
Okay, so maybe last question. Why did you sing Bohemian Rhapsody?
Big fan of game, calls me up, gives me text message, says, I pay you. I am raising money for make website for Viola Spolin. And I do big fund me, big, one of the things I give is I will do Heavy Weapons Guy for you for $75 or more. One man pays me the money. He says, I want you to sing Bohemian Rhapsody so I can animate Heavy Weapons Guy. So I say for $75, I sing like Queen.
That's true. I've heard that.
We are the champions. No, I sing Bohemian Rhapsody.
Oh, thank you so much.
That's how it happened.
That's how it happened.
I raised money for a website.
Amazing, amazing job. Thank you, Heavy.
True story.
True story.
Yeah, true story. Babushka, you are so cute.
Actually, I can understand a little bit because I learned Russian in the school. Oh my God, Gary, that was fun. That was really fun experience. So yeah, I think we are like really going to the end of our lovely talk. What
You allowed me to just ramble on for so much of it.
I
I had so much fun having that conversation with you the other
uh,
day.
I love it, and I still have a few questions. So
Sure,
we will wrapping up, but I want to ask you still a few questions. So
sure.
what would you say in your words? What are principles of improvisation?
The principles of improvisation are to play fully, to play fully with your physical, with your mind and your body connected, to go to where you don't know, to go to unknown areas. That would be the print. What that's the purpose is to keep to keep expanding that spiral outward to new areas.
Mm-hmm.
If you're, you know, if you're going over the same old thing, it might be entertainment, but it isn't art.
Mm-hmm.
Art is an exploration of the new. It's bringing into the phenomenal world something from the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
We want to bring out, we want to go there and make it known.
Mm-hmm.
And it's endless. That's the beauty of it.
And why do you love improvisation?
Wow. It's it is the most alive you can possibly be. It when you are in the present, there's and you're at the top of your game. It's there's no better feeling in the world, and there's no better, well, there is for me, uh side coaching and giving other people this experience is actually my big passion.
Mm-hmm.
uh Opening up that unknown area for somebody else is a thrill for me.
If you could say to uh, Viola now, one sentence, one thing, what would that be?
She would yell at me. I would say, thank you, Viola.
um, if you could give one advice to the beginners, like the beginners in improvisation, what would that be?
I'd say, don't let your teachers lay claim to your talent.
Oh.
If they're true teachers, they're there to shoot you off into the unknown, into your own journey.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make a guru of any of your teachers.
That's great.
It doesn't do them any good, and it certainly doesn't do you any good. Might make you some money, but is that the point?
And very, very last question. When last time did you do something for the first time, which is maybe not connected to improv, like making the scene, because this is always new, but like in your, maybe in your private life, not the improvisational life, what that was?
What have I done? That's new, you mean? That
Mm-hmm.
that's new. Boy, that's a good question. Other than teaching, which is constantly new and renewing, I think the last time I did something completely outside my, it was 9 years ago, I went skydiving. My improv class up here in Redmond, when I turned 60 years old, took me skydiving.
Wow.
We all skydived, and that was a very new experience. I have a video of it. It's amazing.
It must have been exciting.
It was unbelievable. The minute I hit the ground, I wanted to do it again.
Oh my God.
It's a fabulous experience. You should do it.
I think nobody would drag me there with the horses. Oh, that's great. Gary,
Yeah.
it was really lovely, and I think a very deep and extended talk,
It
which
was. There's so much to talk about with Viola's work.
I know, and maybe we meet for that another time. That would be lovely because
I would love it. I think you're a beautiful person, wonderful interviewer. You're fun to play with. Thank you for coming to my last coffee clutch. We had fun with you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting
You're
me.
welcome anytime.
Oh, thank you so much.
Absolutely.